The Indus Waters Treaty. The Indus Waters Treaty was signed in 1960 after 9 years of negotiations between India and Pakistan with the help of the World Bank, which is also a signatory. Signed by India's Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and the then President of Pakistan, Ayub Khan. The treaty pertains to most complete and satisfactory utilization of the waters of the Indus system comprising of the 6 rivers running across the Indus Basin. The negotiations were the initiative of former World Bank President Eugene Black. Former U.S. President Dwight Eisenhower described it as one bright spot in a very depressing world picture that we see so often. Significance. It is seen as one of the most successful international treaties. It has survived frequent tensions, including conflict, and it has provided a framework for irrigation and hydropower development for more than half a century. It is a generous treaty in terms of both the sharing ratio 80.52% of the aggregate water flows in the Indus system reserved for Pakistan and the total volume of basin waters for the downstream state. It is the first and only treaty that goes beyond water sharing to partitioning rivers. Important provisions. The 3 western rivers Jhelum, Chenab and Indus were made available to Pakistan for unrestricted use. The eastern rivers Ravi, Beas and Sutlej were made available to India for unrestricted use. Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, western rivers and India. Under the treaty obligation, India shall not permit any interference with these waters except for the following uses defined under the treaty: domestic use, non-consumptive use, agricultural use, as set out in Annexure C, and generation of hydroelectric power, as set out in Annexure D. Except as provided in Annexure D and E, India shall not store any water of, or construct any storage works on, the western rivers. Thus, while India could use the western rivers, restrictions were placed on building of storage systems. The treaty states that except in certain cases, no storage and irrigation systems can be built by India on the western rivers. India is permitted to construct hydroelectric power facilities on these rivers subject to constraints specified in annexures to the treaty. Working of the treaty. Treaty sets out a mechanism for cooperation and information exchange between the 2 countries regarding their use of the rivers, known as the Permanent Indus Commission, which has a commissioner from each country. The treaty also sets forth distinct procedures to handle issues which may arise. Handle of issue. Questions are handled by the Commission, differences are to be resolved by a neutral expert, and disputes are to be referred to a 7-member arbitral tribunal called the Court of Arbitration. The World Bank's role in relation to differences and disputes is limited to the designation of people to fulfill certain roles when requested by either or both of the parties. Previous disagreements. India and Pakistan disagree about the construction of the Kishenganga 330 megawatts and Ratle 850 megawatts hydroelectric power plants being built by India. The 2 countries disagree over whether the technical design features of the 2 hydroelectric plants contravene the treaty. The plants are on respectively a tributary of the Jhelum and the Chenab rivers. The treaty designates these 2 rivers as well as the Indus as the western rivers, to which Pakistan has unrestricted use. Among other uses, under the treaty, India is permitted to construct hydroelectric power facilities on these rivers subject to constraints specified in annexures to the treaty. Current event of Kashmir. The most recent meeting of the Permanent Indus Commission (PIC) between India and Pakistan was held on May 30–31, 2022, in New Delhi. Since then, no further meetings have taken place, marking a significant lapse in the annual dialogue mandated by the Indus. This breakdown in communication is particularly noteworthy in light of recent events. Following a deadly terrorist attack in Kashmir that resulted in the deaths of 26 civilians.
जहां पहलगाम इलाका और जम्मू कश्मीर के पहलगाम में निशाने पर पर्यटकों को लिया गया है। इस वक्त की बड़ी खबर मैं आपको बता दूं, जम्मू कश्मीर के पहलगाम में पर्यटकों पर सीधा निशाना आतंकवादियों ने साधा है।
16 लोगों की मौत की पुष्टि हो चुकी है। ये बेहद दुखद खबर है। मृतकों में महाराष्ट्र, गुजरात, हरियाणा, उत्तर प्रदेश के पर्यटक शामिल हैं। देश के कोने कोने से लोग वहां पर पहुंचे हुए थे और ऐसे में 16 ऐसे लोग जिन्होंने अपनी जान गंवा दी है, जिन पर आतंकियों ने हमला किया।
Civilians. India has suspended participation in the Indus Waters Treaty. The absence of PIC meetings over the past 2 years underscores the deteriorating diplomatic relations and raises concerns about the future of water-sharing agreements between the two nations. India's position after that. Current announcement regarding the Indus Water Treaty by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri to uphold the treaty after the attack.
Development. Recognizing the seriousness of this terrorist attack, the CCS decided upon the following measures. 1. The Indus Waters Treaty of 1960 will be held in abeyance with immediate effect until Pakistan credibly and irrevocably abjures its support for cross-border terrorism.
It's important to note that India has not revoked the Indus Water Treaty. Doing so would require a formal process and could have serious international consequences. Instead, India has chosen to hold, or pause, its participation in the treaty mechanisms, including information sharing and meetings of the Permanent Indus Commission. This move is seen as a form of diplomatic pressure rather than a legal withdrawal. It allows India to signal its displeasure, particularly after recent events in Kashmir, without formally breaching the treaty. Should the treaty be revoked? Any calls for revoking the treaty needs to be tempered with multiple factors. Revoking the treaty could be used by the Pakistani side to draw into another limited conflict or further boost its attempts to foment trouble in Kashmir. Given the China-Pakistan axis, revoking the treaty may be used to portray India as attempting to arm-twist the lower riparian in the region. Moreover, China can use this as a precedent for refusing to change their current stand of refusing to enter into a water-sharing agreement on Brahmaputra River. The treaty has prevented water conflicts and created incentive for peace. For over 5 decades, both India and Pakistan are peacefully sharing the water of Indus and its tributaries, thanks to the Indus Water Treaty. It may be noted that both India and Pakistan are still at loggerheads over various issues since partition, but there has been no fight over water after the treaty was ratified. The treaty has survived India-Pakistan wars of 1965, 1971 and the 1999 Kargil standoff besides Kashmir insurgency since 1990 and is considered as the most successful water treaty in world. Upholding the treaty even under adverse circumstances has added to the international image and India prides itself in being a responsible country. Short of abrogation, the treaty may be modified under the existing provisions of Article 12 Clause 3 of Indus Water Treaty. Way forward. We should ensure the optimal use of India's share of water from the Eastern River. We need to use all measures to expedite implementation of project in Eastern and Western River, raise the demand for modification under Article 12 Clause 3. Parliamentary Standing Committee of 2022 ha recommend exploring changes in the Indus Water Treaty. Complete Indus Water Treaty infrastructure project for Western and Eastern River promptly in a time-bounded manner. If the terrorism still continue, we need to revoke the Indus Water Treaty permanently, because terrorism and talk cannot go hand on hand, or blood and water cannot flow together. Prepare diplomatically. If Pakistan-sponsored terrorism continues, India must be ready to build global support before taking any drastic action. As India rightly states, blood and water cannot flow together. If terrorism persists, India may have to reconsider the treaty's future more seriously. Conclusion. The Indus Waters Treaty has stood the test of time, but the current situation poses a new kind of challenge. India's balanced approach, exerting pressure without violating international norms, reflects strategic maturity. However, if terrorism and cross-border violence continue unabated, India might have no option but to reconsider even stronger measures on water sharing, asserting that national security comes first.